We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 76a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that according to the one who says that no sein tam lefgam is mutter, that if it imparts a detrimental taste, then that does not make the food usher. So then why is it that the Torah says that we have to kasher the vessels that come from Ovdei Kochavim, from the Gentiles? Why should we have to kasher them? The taste that is imparted from the walls of those vessels is no sein tam lefgam. And the Gemara now is in the middle of answering that the Torah is talking specifically about bas yom. It's talking about a situation where the kedera was used with non-kosher food that day. So if it was used that very same day, the taste that it imparts is actually delav no sein tam lefgamu. It's not no sein tam lefgam. It's not a detrimental taste. It's actually a beneficial taste. That's why the Torah says that those vessels have to be kashered. But the Gemara then asks me kan v'elach. But if that's the case, if it's after that day, so then lishtri, so then it should be permitted. There should be no reason why you have to kasher other kinds of vessels that are not kedera bas yoma. And the Gemara says gezeira kedera she'ina bas yoma mishum kedera bas yoma. We make a decree on all vessels. Let's say a pot that wasn't used that day, we make a gezeira. You have to kasher it because of a pot that might have been used the very same day. And the Gemara continues v'idach. Now the other opinion, which says that no sein tam lefgam is aser, that's forbidden even if it imparts a detrimental taste, and that opinion holds kedera bas yoma nami mifgam pagma, because the kedera even used that day is going to impart a detrimental taste, and yet the Torah says those vessels need to be kashered, and therefore you see, according to that opinion, that no sein tam lefgam is in fact forbidden. And Rashi explains bas yoma means that day, shabishal ba ovid kochavim hayom, that the ovid kochavim cooked in it that day. So again, according to the one who says that no sein tam lefgam is mutter, so if it was that day though, it's not no sein tam lefgam. Aval bishal ba esmol, but if he cooked with it yesterday, kvar hifig ba taimo, then the taste has already gone away, belinas halayla, overnight, veshuv keshapolto b'tav shel acher, so then when it then releases the taste into another cooked item, eino el lefgam, it's just going to be detrimental. And then the Gemara said mikan va'elach lishtri, if that's the case, so if it's after bas yoma, if it's after the day, so then we should say it's permitted af lechatchila, even lechatchila. And again, the Gemara said there's a gezeira kedera she'ena bas yoma because of a kedera bas yoma. And finally, again, the Gemara said that according to the other opinion, that no sein tam lefgam is aser, that opinion holds that even a kedera bas yoma is mifgam pagma. Even a kedera bas yoma imparts a detrimental taste. And again, yet the pasuk says that those vessels have to be kashered. That's why that opinion holds that no sein tam lefgam is aser. And the Gemara continues, Rami le Rav Amram le Rav Sheshes. Rav Amram had the following contradiction for Rav Sheshes. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Hashafudin v'asachla, the spit, and the grill, melavnan ba'or, yakasha, with white hot fire. V'hatanan, but we learned in another Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Meseches Vachim, Gabe Kachim, it says this by Kachim, by Karbonos, it says Hashvur v'asachla, the same utensils, the spit and the grill. Magilan b'chamin, you use boiling hot water in order to kasher, and therefore it seems to be a contradiction between the two Mishnayos. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lei said to him, Amram Bari, Amram, my son, Ma inyan Kachim etzel Giyulei Ovdei Kochavim. What are you comparing Kachim, Karbonos, to Giyulei Ovdei Kochavim, to kashering when it comes to non-kosher vessels from the Gentiles? Hacha over here, Hetera Bala, when it comes to Kachim, so when the vessel originally absorbs the Shvur and the Asachla, when they originally absorb, what they're absorbing is Heter. They're absorbing the flavor from the Karbonos, which at that time are mutter, because it's not yet past the time, it's not yet nosar. But hasam, but over there, when it's not kosher, isura bala, what it's absorbing is something that is forbidden, and that's why over there it's more problematic and requires the white hot fire. But the Gemara says, Amar Rava, Rava says, and the Mesoras Hashas changes this to Rabba. Amar Rabba, Rabba says, sof, but still at the end, who cares at the time of absorption what it was? Ki kapolit, isura kapolit, at the time that it's releasing that flavor, so it's going to be isur. At that point in time, it's already nosar, and so it's the same thing. Why should it be any different just because at the time of the absorption by kachim, it was mutter at that point in time? And so the Gemara instead says, Elo Amar Rava, rather Rava says, again the Mesoras Hashas changes it to Elo Amar Rabba. Rabba says, My Hagola Nami, Shtifa Umarika. What is meant by Hagola? When it says Hagola by Kachim, when it says Hagola in Meseches Vachim, it doesn't refer to boiling hot water, it refers to rinsing and scouring. But the Gemara says, Amar le Abaya. Abaya said, Midami, is that really comparable? Mariko shtifa bitzonin. Marika and shtifa are things you do with cold. You're not doing that with hot. And Hagola bechamin. Hagola is something you do with hot water. How can you say we're referring to shtifa and Marika? And so the Gemara continues, Alamar Abaya. Rather, Abaya says, Yagid olav reo. Yagid olav reo means that you can learn from one Mishnah to the other. Its friend tells you what it means. This Mishnah tells us what the other Mishnah means. Meaning, Tana hacha libun. Over here it says libun, meaning in our Mishnah it uses libun. You're using the white hot fire. V'hu adin lahagala, but you're supposed to look at the other Mishnah and know that hagala also you're supposed to use. You're supposed to use boiling hot water as well. And Tana hasam hagala, and over there Meseches vachim it says hagala. V'hu adin lalibun, and you're supposed to know from our Mishnah that you're supposed to use white hot fire as well. But the Gemara says, Amarle Rava said to him, if so, lisninu lakulu b'chad. If you're going to say that you're supposed to learn from one Mishnah to another, so everything that is required should be in one of the Mishnayos. V'lisni chada b'idach achrisi, and then you list one of the requirements in the other Mishnah. V'leima yagid olav reo. Then you can say yagid olav reo and say that we left out something in that other Mishnah. You learn it from the first Mishnah, which has everything. But to say that you're listing in one Mishnah one thing and in another Mishnah a different thing, and then say yagid olav reo in both directions, that we don't do. And Rashi explains, Magilan, again, that's using boiling hot water, lo chashav kalibun, that's not as good as libun. The libun soref asakli, if you're using white hot fire, that burns the vessel. Gabe kachim hashvud v'asachla, by kachim we learn the spit and the grill, shetzola behen besar kodesh, which you use them to roast meat of kodesh. Misham dechi asi l'machar v'noser, now by the next day it's going to be noser. V'chi hadim mevashal basar kodesh l'machar, and if you're going to cook more besar kodesh the next day, polit shvud begavia taima, so then the taste is going to go from the spit into that other Besar Kodesh. V'noser Isser Karesu, and if it's Noser, that's an Isser of Kares. Amram Bari, so he said, Amram Bini, Amram my son, Gabe Kachim ki bola ha'ishvud hetei bola, by Kachim it absorbs it, and at the time of the absorption it is mutter, hilkach sagi le b'hagola, therefore it's enough to have hagola. And then the Gemara said, Alama Rava hai hagola, then Rava says that when it says hagola, to Katani Hasam, when it says hagola over there by Kachim, Mariko Shtifut refers to scouring and rinsing. Kalamar liolam liflot ha'isser vadai libun boy. What that answer is saying is that really in terms of getting out the Isser, you do need libun. Keshar blias Isser, like you do anytime you have Isser that was absorbed. Ela mitzvahs melechi bekachim, but there's a special mitzvah by kachim, umurak v'shutaf b'moyim. The pasuk says that you have to scour and you have to rinse it in water, and therefore kiyechi dav gzeres hakasav, it's similar to the gzeres hakasav, kasher yiza midama al habeged by kibus. We talk about garments over there also, that they require laundering, b'makom kadosh, in the holy place. Ushviras klicheres b'makom kadoshu, and also the breaking of klicheres in the holy place. V'hu adin l'mariko shtifa, so there's this requirement when it comes to kachim of marika and shtifa. But then the Gemara said, Amalei Abaya, Abaya said to him, Midami, is it comparable? Kolomar means to say, Mikari l'mariko shtifa hagala. Would we refer to marika and shtifa as hagala? Hakal hagala roschin. The word hagala is roschin mashma. That's mashma, you're using boiling water. Shakofin lohaki akli mashabala. You're forcing the vessel to spit out what was absorbed. Umrika b'shtifa b'tzonin. Umrika shtifa are things that you do with cold water. And so then the Gemara said, Alamar Abaya, rather Abaya says, hagala mamish liflot meisuran. It's really hagala to take out the isser. Now you asked the question for our Mishnah that it's libun that's required, the white fire. Lo tikshi, it's not a question. And really you do need both of them, by kachim and by gulei ovdei kochavim. When you're talking about the absorption of non-kosher, you need both. You need to have the hagala and you need libun, liflot isser, in order to get out the isser. Levad mariko shtifa the kachim, and that's besides the marika and shtifa that's needed by kachim. Dein ela mitzvah samelech, which is just a mitzvah, is just a decree from the king, from the pasuk. V'yagid olav reo, and we're going to use yagid olav reo, meaning its counterpart is going to teach us what we do over here. V'nilmad mishnah mechaverta, you're going to learn one mishnah from its friend. Shal kachim mi mishnah seinu, the mishnah by kachim you learn from our mishnah. Or mishnah seinu mi shal kachim, you learn our mishnah from the one in kachim. V'hu adin lalibun, and the same is true for libun shneim tzarach, meaning you need both things. Yagid olav reo, again its counterpart will teach. Iboy lemisninu letarvayu libun v'hagala b'chad. If you're going to use yagid olav reo, you should have listed both requirements by one of the mishnayos, or mishnah seinu or bekachim, either our mishnah or the mishnah in kachim. V'hadar lisni chad b'idach, and then just have one of the requirements in the other mishnah. V'tigmar chaver t'mina, then you can learn the counterpart from it. Mahasam ha below ha lesser, just like over there you need to do both. You can't do one without the other. Hachanami ha below ha lesser. So to over here you can't have one without the other. And so the Gemara continues and instead answers, Alama Rava, rather Rava says, Kachim hainu tamayu, the reason why Kachim it's sufficient to do Hagola is Kid Rav Nachman Amar Rabba bar Avua. It's like Rav Nachman says that Rabba bar Avua says, the Yomer who says, Kol Yom v'Yom, each day Nasa Gil Lechaveiro, becomes a Gil, it purges whatever there was the day before. And Rashi explains, Kol Yom v'Yom Nasa Gil Lechaveiro, Shemevashlen bohen, because you're going to cook in them, Ve'eno Maspik Lios Noser, and it never becomes Noser, Achetachzer Upolto, it already releases it, B'tav Shalacher, in the next thing that you're cooking. Meaning to say, it never really becomes Noser, because it absorbs the kachim, and then you're going to cook in it the very next day when it's not yet Noser, and it's going to release whatever was in there, and then a new thing is going to go in there, and that also will not become Noser, because you're going to use that the next day. Well, the Kamon Parach and Rashi says, the Gemara further on will ask, if so, Hagola Nami Loli Boy, so you shouldn't require Hagola either, you shouldn't require any kashering, because you're essentially saying over here that it never becomes Noser. But the Gemara first continues and says, Teinach Shlamim. Now this answer, that Kol Yom v'Yom Nasa Gil Lechaver, that works by a carbon Shlamim. Tekevan de L'shnei Yomim Isachli, because since you have 2 days to eat a carbon Shlamim, so Mekame den Havin Noser, before it ever becomes Noser, Kahavi Gil, you're going to be able to purge it, because you'll cook in it the very next day, and you'll purge whatever was there, and whatever was there is not yet Noser. Elochatos, but when it comes to a carbon chatos, Kevan de Liyom v'Layla Misachla, since it's eaten just for 1 day and a night, so Ki Mevashel bo ha'idna chatos have a Noser. When you're going to cook in it now, a chatos, it's going to right away become Noser the next day. Ki hadam Mevashel bo l'machar, and so the next day when you cook in it, o shlamim o chatos, whether you're cooking a shlamim or a chatos, kapolit Noser the chatos to ha'idna b'chatos u'shlamim de l'machar, it's going to release the Noser of the chatos right now in the chatos of the shlamim the next day. So by a carbon chatos, this answer will not work because it becomes Noser essentially immediately the next day. And the Gemara continues, Amri, they answer, lo no tzricha, it's necessary. What you'll do is as follows. If you ever use the vessel for a chatos right now, hadr mevashel b'ha'idna shlamim, just make sure to cook right after, on the same day cook a shlamim. The chatos de l'machar u shlamim de esmol b'hade hadadi kashalim zimnayu. That way the chatos that you're going to do tomorrow and the shlamim that you did yesterday, they're going to finish at the same time. V'hadr mevashel shlamim de l'machar, and then you'll cook the shlamim the next day. The basic idea over here is that if you do cook a chatos, don't wait until the next day to use the vessel. Use the vessel that very same day. And Rashi explains, lo tzricha, no, it's necessary, that if you cook a chatos now, hadr mevashel bei bo bayom shlamim chaz v'shok shel kohanim, so you'll cook that very same day a shlamim, the chaz and the shok that belongs to the kohanim. Bahade hadadi shalom zemnayu, they'll finish their time at the same time. V'yein kan pleitas noser, you'll never have a release of noser. V'hadr mevashel bei shlamim bo bayom, and then again you're going to cook shlamim that very same day. Kidamrinan b'chol pam mevashel shlamim la'achar chatos bo bayom, that you'll do every single time. You'll cook a shlamim right after chatos on that very same day. That way, it will not be noser the next day. But the Gemara continues and asks on this approach what Rashi already mentioned, the hachi, if so, hagola nami loli boy, you shouldn't even require hagola, you should require no kashering at all, because we're saying essentially it never has a taste that it releases that is actually prohibited, because it never becomes noser, you're always getting rid of it before it becomes noser. And the Gemara says to that kasha, the Gemara says indeed that is difficult. And the Gemara continues with another answer to the contradiction in Mishnayis. Rav Papa says, high karid, high low karid. In this case it becomes hardened, and in the other case it does not become hardened. And Rashi explains, Rav Papa Amar high karid, high low karid. In this case it's hardened, in the other case it's not. Liolam bekachim isura palit. Really by kachim there is isur that is being released. Udukakashalach ni boy libun. And so then your question is, we should require libun, the white hot fire, kimas nisa, like our Mishnah. Lo dami, it's not similar to our Mishnah. The giyul of de kochavim aidi delom avashli kol shaita. When it comes to what's absorbed because it was used with non-kosher by the Gentiles, since you're not cooking constantly with those vessels, umiskasha habliya besocho, so then whatever's absorbed becomes hardened. V'nidvekes bo bekulo, it's completely attached. V'noach liflot b'hagola, it's not going to be easy to get it out with hagola. Ad shemalavno b'or, so instead you need to use the white hot fire. Avol bekachim, but when it comes to kachim, the chol shaitim avashli, but there you're constantly cooking with those utensils. Low karet, so it never gets the opportunity to harden. V'noach liflot, it's much easier for it to come out. Hilkach b'hagola kapala, therefore with hagola it will be released, and that's why we're more lenient when it comes to these vessels that were used with kachim. That's Rav Papa's answer. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rav Ashi says, Liolam Kedaman Meikar. Really go back to our original answer. Hacha Hetera Bala, Hacha Isura Bala over here, meaning when we're talking about kachim, at the time it absorbs, it's heter. It only becomes noser later on. And when we're talking about non-kosher, so it's absorbing the isser, it's absorbing the non-kosher, it's also right away. And you asked on this answer, that still it should be the same thing, because at the time it's releasing it is noser, so it's releasing isser, and we should treat it the same as with the vessels that were used with non-kosher. The answer to that is, at the time that it's releasing it, lo isei li isura be'ene. At that time already, the isser is not be'ein, it's not visible, and therefore we can treat it more leniently. Rashi explains, Liolam kedamrina meikar, it's like we said originally, Dahaina mishum devikachim hetera bala, because by kachim we say that at the time of the absorption it was mutter. With the kasha loch, and that which you asked, kipolit isura palit, that when it's releasing it, it's releasing isser, lo chomer isuro, so it's not such a strict isser that's being released. Shekeshanasa noser, because at the time it becomes noser, at the time it becomes left over beyond its time, lo have isser be'ene, the isser is no longer visible in front of us. Shebesoch it's absorbed within the walls of the vessel. And so therefore you've never really recognized the isser, so we can be more lenient. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Viad Kama Melavnan, when using white hot fire to do liban, how hot does it have to get? Amar Rabbi Moni says that Shetosher Klipasan, until the outer layer of the vessel is peeled off. And the Gemara continues, V'keitzad Magila, now how do you do Hagala? Amar Ravuna says, Yora Katana B'soch Yora Gadol. If you have a small pot, you put it inside a large pot. The large pot has boiling hot water, and that's how you kasher the small pot. Yora Gadolamai, what if you have a large pot, you can't put it into anything, what do you do? And the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here, the following proof. Dahu Duda, there was a cauldron, the Havoy Bei Rav Akavia, which was by the house of Rav Akavia. Ahadar Lei, he surrounded it, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis.